We've been flying our test tracks to test the radar equipment in this general area, and as I recall, it was a little more VMC then than it is now. We've been flying straight tracks north and south when we discovered the fire, and I'm looking now for the exact location. I believe that the point of impact was right down there, because I've got a photograph which I think is of that yellow building, which leads me to believe that the power lines that you probably cannot see over there crossing perpendicular across the road, the line that I hit first, which would mean that the fence post and point of impact would be down here a little bit. I'm going to go down and see if I can find it. Okay, this looks familiar. I believe that that is the post that I drove in the ground 10 years ago, and this makes me more sure of it. If I were a betting man, I'd put a lot of money on the fact that those pieces are out of the interior of a 172, and that that is part of the windshield or side window of the 172. This is where the airplane impacted. It hit that power line and just flipped straight nose in right here. It just shouldn't have to happen, and I think we can do things to avoid it. I think we can do better. I'm Greg Soter. I live in Provo, Utah. I've been a pilot most of my adult life. If people are watching this pilot story, they're probably like me, fell in love with aviation at a very early age, and that was me. I've always known I had to fly, so in my early 20s, I trotted out to the airport and said, "Teach me to fly," and it's been great ever since. The story that you're here to watch began when I was asked by a local company here in Utah, a firm that builds rather sophisticated radar equipment that needs to be tested from the air. And this company has a couple of 172s that they use as test platforms, and they found me, knew that I enjoyed flying and would probably be happy to fly occasionally for them on a contract basis. Invited me to do that, and I was excited to do so. The way that they would do the test flights is they would load up the baggage and backseat areas with their test equipment and would hang these radar pods, radar antennas out underneath one of the wings, and would go fly these test flights that have a pilot in the left seat and one of their engineers in the right seat with a laptop, babysitting the equipment and analyzing the test flight. And we'd go out and do these mindless tracks for several hours at a time, rather precise, but very routine. Well, they had invited me to do a couple of flights, and this was in 2013, in late June 2013. They said, "Greg, would like you to go do another flight with one of our engineers." Fine, I'm happy to do that. So I got up early that morning, all bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I get to go flying today, this is great, and was excited, got out to the airport quite early. We departed Spanish Fork, Utah, a small airport south of Provo, and the area we were going to be flying over was east and south of us, which meant that we had to fly through a canyon, got through the canyon, turned south, followed a highway down to the area that where they wanted us to do the test tracks. And we spent the next 2+ hours, first of all, just flying straight line tracks, north, turn around, go south, turn around, go north, south, We had been into the flight by this time maybe 2¼ hours, something like that. And the engineer, Gerald, he kind of sniffed and said, "Greg," he said, I smell smoke. And I realized I did too, and I looked down between the seats and I could see some smoke kind of wafting up between the seats from the back of the plane towards the front. And I turned around and looked back between the seats, back in the baggage compartment, the back seat area where the equipment was, and I saw an open, active flame on top of the equipment. And I thought, oh my gosh, what's up with this? I'm a little embarrassed to admit that my first thought was to do a 180 and fly back to Spanish Fork to the airport. Well, that thought lasted for about a second and a half, because I realized, Soter, you're going to be a flying torch by the time you get back to Spanish Fork, if indeed you make it back to Spanish Fork. So I quickly changed that plan and decided, well, I'm going to land here now, somewhere nearby. The area we were in was generally foothills. It was foothills. We were in sort of a big canyon, and the Highway 89 was just going pretty much in the center of all that geography. And as I looked down on either side of the highway, I did not see anything that I thought was a suitable landing spot. So I thought, well, okay, the road it is, even though that's not my first preference. By the time we got to this point in my thought process, I would guess that we were maybe down to 2,000 AGL, maybe. I dialed 121.5 and made a Mayday call, and bless his heart, some Southwest pilot, I have never been able to figure out who he is. I'd like to thank him, but I recall Southwest pilot coming right back to me. And at that point, I remember deciding, okay, that's enough talk. Let's fly this airplane. So I found myself conveniently in kind of a right-hand downwind, a big, long downwind on a stretch of the highway that appeared to be long enough and straight enough that it would be a suitable landing spot. At that point, my memory goes away. It's like somebody wiped the hard drive clean, but left a handful of little tiny snippets of memory, and gosh, some of those memories are really interesting. I was lined up to land on the road, apparently short final, and I recall just a quick little flash, an instant little flash of seeing that stinking power line. Between the time I saw the power line and apparently hit it was just instantaneous. Then the right wing hit the power lines that were going parallel to the road, and that just flipped me nose first into the ground. My next memory is being in a lot of pain. It was very quiet, no sound of any kind going on. I was hanging upside down by my lap belt. We did not have any shoulder straps in that plane, only an old lap belt. I remember thinking to myself, I am in a lot of trouble here. This is not a good situation. Can I wiggle my fingers? Nope. Can I wiggle my toes? Nope. I really hurt. I really am not happy about where I am right now. From there on, the next week or, I don't know, 10 days, something like that, is sort of a jumble of, probably drug-induced and sleep-induced and pain-induced, just a whole jumble of different memories. Okay, so we had a fire in the airplane, we hit. How many opportunities is there for spark? And we got gas. Was the fire out? I'm not sure when the fire went out. If it went out on impact or if it burned itself out, I have no idea. But the fact that we had fuel dripping out of the wings and didn't have a fire is just beyond my comprehension. I don't know when I was informed. I don't know if it was the scene of the accident or at the hospital or the care center, but this fellow, I was told that I did ask about my passenger, the engineer, Gerald, and was informed, sadly, that Gerald did not make it. He was killed on impact from just blunt head trauma. Why was that the case? I don't know. Why did Gerald die and I didn't? I don't know. That really amazes me that here we are, two guys sitting in the front seat of the same plane. We're about a foot apart. You know how close you are in a 172. Granted, he was a bigger, heavier guy than I am, but same plane, same speed, same impact, same force, same this, same that, and he died and I didn't. I don't know how to account for that. But I'm not sure. You know, I feel terrible that somebody died when I was at the controls. I mean, that's just bad. And I have carried that with me ever since the accident. I did make contact, got a phone number and made contact with Gerald's wife and expressed my condolences and I apologized to her. She was very understanding and you know, she didn't rag on me at all. But the fact is, I was flying the plane that left her a widow and left her teenage kids without a dad. And there's no fixing that. There's just no fixing that, except to say, well, okay, what can we do in the future that might mitigate that for somebody else? I am terribly embarrassed to admit that I don't have any memory of, in my pre-flight, of whether or not I specifically determined that there was a fire extinguisher in the aircraft and whether or not it was functioning. As I recall, it seems like the NTSB report said that there was not. And boy, bad on me. I don't believe at that time a fire extinguisher was required equipment, but common sense says, you know, you really better have a fire extinguisher on board an aircraft. It better be the right type of fire extinguisher and it better be currently charged. The fact is, when we get in an airplane, we're putting ourselves in a high-risk situation. Well, we love to fly. When we do that, we had better do the best job we can to prepare ourselves. Number one, take emergency procedure practices more seriously. I cannot tell you how often I see check ride candidates or students or others in the left seat and I'm sitting in the right seat. You know, okay, well, you just lost your power. All right, ho-hum, we just lost our power. We're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to look here, we're going to pitch for best glide, we're going to put on the fuel pump, we're going to check the Cessna fuel tank selector, we're going to cycle our mags, yada, yada, yada. And I see people go through that with this almost casual attitude. My opinion on that now, post-accident, is engage with that process. Really engage and put yourself in a situation where you say, all right, this is a true emergency. I'm going to do everything I can to make this turn out well. Another big one is that I am now a fan of, if you're going to land off airport, you're better off landing off of a road than on the road. One of the reasons you don't want to land on roads is because power lines are really, really hard to see. You got this black power line against black asphalt, and if the power line is here and the airplane is here and the asphalt is down here, you're not going to see black against black. I went down to the accident scene a couple of times following the accident. First time I went down and stood there on the road, or stood on the point of impact, I looked around on this side of the road, looked on this side of the road, and I thought to myself, Soter, you're an idiot. You could easily have landed that airplane over there with far less damage and one less death than took place. You could have landed over there, I'll bet you could have landed over there, etc. So I'm a fan of taking a less than perfect landing site off asphalt than taking what you think is going to be a perfect landing site on asphalt. Another one has to do with restraints, seat belts, shoulder belts. 2 days ago I had my first flight in a glider. I noticed that they had a 5-point system of restraint. And after I got that 5-point system on my shoulders, across my lap, up through my legs, I thought to myself, man, I'm in a little cocoon. This thing is going to have to get really seriously damaged before the damage starts to come to me. But I can tell you this, I'm not going to get hurt because I flew out of that seat. So better restraint systems, I think, are good. At very minimum, a shoulder belt in addition to your lap belt. Greg, what about the fire in the airplane? Turns out that the fire was indeed located on the equipment in the back. As I told you, I saw it back there on the equipment. And what had happened is that 2 wires, some fairly large wires, positive and negative, had shorted. The insulation had worn, and they had shorted. And you know what happens when you get an electrical dead short, you get heat, you eventually get fire, and apparently the insulation started to burn, and that's what created the fire that precipitated the entire problem we've been discussing. I can't help but think of Gerald, the fellow, the engineer who was in the right seat, and think to myself, okay, what could we have done, what could I have done as the PIC of that airplane, or what could we do generally as aviators to avoid that, to save one more life? Gosh, we need to do everything we can to absorb information and learn and read articles, read AOPA magazine, read, listen and watch webcasts, read online material. There's just a huge amount of information available that we can learn to do this better, to do that better, to do this more safely, etc. It's just endless. Maybe the guy that died right here hit this piece of ground and lost his life. Maybe that didn't have to happen. It's our responsibility, every one of us, to do what we can to stack the cards in our favor.